When mother died, I went to the boarding school and then they killed my chicken and then I was strung up and abused.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside him is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose them for yourself, please visit chatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, the number of wipes these movies take to get off your respective butts. So, thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Chat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all information and past episodes at chatpod.com/TV. Finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, chatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All of that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing today?
Gene, before we get to the movie, do we owe the audience maybe a disclaimer that, because we're coming off of a film about animated cars, a World Cup, a lot of drinking, and now we're going into apartheid. They might not have listened to Cars. Do we give them a disclaimer?
If there's any degree of irreverence on this podcast or us not taking things as seriously as we should, I think, dear listener, please lend us a bit of grace. Dick Ebert and I have both been drinking on this, the finals of the FIFA World Cup 2026. We would never let the schedule fall behind, and therefore we are sticking to our recording schedule and bringing you the quality of chat that you know, expect, and deserve. So I apologize in advance. We are feeling quite giggly. And you know what? For that matter, if we take things more seriously than we should, also blame it on the alcohol.
And Gene, this week, Hollywood has always loved making these big historical dramas. They got large budgets, beautiful locations, important subjects, the kind of movies that look like they're supposed to be unforgettable and very important. But just because a movie feels important doesn't mean people are going to show up to see it. Some become classics, others quietly disappear, even after studios bet and spend millions on them. So coming back to this one, the question isn't whether it had big ambition, it's whether the ambition turned into a great movie, or just another expensive swing that the audience passed on. That's why tonight, thanks to our commissioner and great supporter, Rob, we're reviewing the 1992 historical drama, The Power of One.
And Rob wrote in and said, "Good morning, Gene and Big D. Before I go any further, I just wanted to say a congratulations to you both for reaching the incredible milestone of 500 episodes. Wow. What a fantastic achievement. And thank you for all your hard work, dedication, and perseverance over all these years. Fueled by your love of movies, your expanding audience of chat crewers, your growing friendship and families, and more recently, some well-deserved sponsors coming on board, bringing you some extra cheddar. Of course, the odd glass of beer, Pinot Grigio along the way. The pod is getting better and better. Without a doubt, guys, this will continue to grow over future years, and I'm looking forward to listening in every week, as usual, and being there for the journey and hopefully contributing many commissions well into the future. I was casually perusing your website the other day, wondering what episodes were coming up to keep me company on my countryside walks with Monty, the four-legged wonder. And then I spotted my next 4 commissions starting in just 2 weeks and immediately thought, oh crap, I haven't sent in any of my intros. Cue a slight panic, a few expletives being muttered under my breath, and a quick message to you both to say, I'm on it. Followed by a rapid rental of this first film, The Power of One, from good old Amazon, just to remind me of why I chose this movie. To be fair, we are having another heat wave in the UK currently, so I'm blaming the heat, lack of air conditioning, and lack of sleep due to watching England beat Mexico in the middle of the night, causing me to be lackluster in my intros. Anyway, on to my film choice for this week. Fingers crossed this will start this batch of commissions off positively. The Power of One, from 1992, is a film I have wanted to commission for a long time, and I wonder if you've ever seen it before this commission. Many of my friends have never seen it or heard of it. In fact, looking at the box office performance, I think the majority of cinema goers never knew this existed, as it totally bombed. I honestly don't know why, but this could be a layup for a battering from you both. Cue the memory flashback for Rapid Fire and The Hitcher. Anyway, best foot forward and all that. So here it goes. I remember seeing a trailer for The Power of One in the cinema, and it showed African sunsets, beautiful scenery, and just a few seconds of Victoria Falls, and that was it. I was all in. The reason for this is that I was lucky enough to go to Zimbabwe with my late mom and my older brother for a month when I was 8 years old. That trip and the beauty of Zimbabwe and Africa blew my 8-year-old socks off, and it's still the greatest place I've ever been to. The landscape, the generosity, and the kindness of the African people, the smell of the African savannas, and the true majesty of Victoria Falls will never leave me. In fact, when the older PK is walking next to Victoria Falls, or as the locals call it, the smoke that thunders, in the latter part of the movie, the memories flooded back, and I was back in 1980, standing atop the waterfalls, being soaked to the skin from the spray and being mesmerized by the view and the sounds of water crashing down in front of me. The film is excellent in my opinion. I can see it not being everyone's choice of movie, but I think it's brave and that it tackles a subject many filmmakers kept their distance from, the brutality of 1940s Africa, the horrors of apartheid, and humans' capacity for evil. PK's life journey from being the only English boy in an all-Afrikaan boarding school to becoming a champion boxer and the rainmaker for the African tribes is a difficult watch, but I like that the film does not sanitize this. I feel it wants you to wince and gasp and make you uncomfortable. The scene where Morgan Freeman's character has to lick the guard's shoe clean is horrendous, but it's incredibly powerful and one I've never forgotten. What does come across in this movie is the power of the human spirit, not just from the main character, PK's perspective, but from the Africans who were treated horrifically during these times. Watching them suffer without losing their dignity and then finally standing up for themselves in the closing stages had me punching the air. And who'd have thought I'd ever find myself cheering as a very young Daniel Craig got the absolute crap kicked out of him. I realize this makes me sound a little barbaric, but Sergeant Botha absolutely had it coming, didn't he? The cast is great as well. Morgan Freeman steals every scene he's in. Stephen Dorff does a great job as the older PK, and John Gielgud brings a real gravitas as the headmaster, while Daniel Craig is truly hateable as Sergeant Botha. The supporting cast all play their part in making the story work. The film is beautifully shot with landscapes and the wonder of the African sunsets being shown in their true glory. Boxing matches are pretty good, not up to Rocky standard, but for the 90s, pretty good. I also think that the relationship between Gielgud and PK has a definite Daniel-san and Mr. Miyagi vibe to it, which I like as well. The 8-punch combination is the equivalent of the crane kick, surely. But for me, the real star is the Hans Zimmer's score. It is absolutely gorgeous. The scenes where the prisoners sing together, and again, when the tribe sing outside the boxing match for PK, still give me goosebumps. I remember hearing similar music during my visit, and I loved it back then as well. Now, don't get me wrong, fellas. I know this film is far from perfect, and I'm sure you'll be pointing out plenty of flaws during the next 60 minutes, but here's my take on it. Some of the performances, particularly from the younger cast members and the African heavyweight champion, can be a little shaky. There's not as much action as some people would want, and so the pacing drags in places, and I think the runtime could easily have been trimmed by about 10 to 15 minutes. But I'm standing by it. As always, I think I'll be going in lower than you guys on the wipe score, But I think this film is a true example of where personal memories can and definitely do influence my score and opinions. My visit to Africa is still ingrained in my memory 45 years later. I was the 8-year-old PK, completely in awe of everything Africa showed me. I can close my eyes and still picture the sunsets, the power of Victoria Falls, and the smell of being on safari with the sounds of screaming elephants and the roar of lions firmly implanted in my brain. Hopefully, this will never leave me. This film and my own African adventure back in 1980 always reminds me of my mom, who died in late December 2024. She loved Africa as much as I did, and we'd often sit talking about that incredible holiday and the incredible things we had experienced. Every single time we did, her face would light up with the biggest smile. I miss her and those conversations massively, and watching this movie brought so many of those wonderful memories flooding back. As I mentioned in my previous Field of Dreams intro, I love how films spark memories and take you to places you remember and cherish, and The Power of One definitely did this for me. So, with all those wonderful memories of my mom filling my mind, I don't really care what wipe score this ends up with. If you push me, I'd say it's a 1.75 wipe movie. But for its sparking memories of my mom, it's almost perfect. I hope you enjoy it, fellas. And as always, I'll be looking forward to hearing your thoughts on it. I'm strapped in and ready. Until next time, and as the Zulus would say, Giabunga, Kakulu, Ngako Konke. It means thank you for everything. Rob H., the UK one. Oh, Rob, after reviewing Invictus for Chris D, even though Chris D didn't ask for Invictus, I was genuinely curious about how other movies portrayed apartheid. Knowing that we're doing it in honor of your mother's memory as well adds additional gravity to this commission, and I am so keyed in and ready to go.
Hearing you talk about the importance of this film and a shared experience with your mother, it triggered in me just my recent trip with my mother. And I've recorded with her another of the contests where she describes movies and the listeners have to guess. And it's funny the things that we choose to connect to the memories of our youth with our parents, that this film, Rob, would be it. So I'd like to say we'll tread lightly on this film, but I know the film itself isn't the important thing. It's the shared memory of your experience, the smells, the beauty of the land and the people there. So I know you won't take offense to it. But Gene, I do have to ask, as our Anglophile, right? Do you think this is the equivalent where the English, where they have to face their shame for what they have done around the world? It's like when we see a slavery movie, when they see these like colonial films, do they have to be like, oh, another one?
I mean, oddly, in The Power of One, no, because they kind of are portrayed here as like the good guys, right? The English are without fault, the Anglo-Africans, as it were. They're contrasted with the Afrikaners, and so therefore they're the ones being prosecuted. I don't think this is their moment of shame. I'd be interested to see what that movie is, right? I'd be interested to see if the English ever did. And write in, please, host@chatpod.com. Did the English ever do a movie where they were the assholes in North America? India, yes, that's well covered with Gandhi. I wonder if the English ever did a movie. They're like, hey, that shit we pulled in the War 1812 or maybe the Revolutionary War, not cool, bro. Stamp Act, a bit of forgotten history for those who don't know a ton about the Revolutionary War. The English at the time of the Revolutionary War were against the slave trade. During the war, basically advertised to enslaved people in the South in particular that if they were just to leave, abandon their plantations, that the English would take them in and make them part of their military and they would be treated as free men. That wasn't exactly the case. They ended up being really like servants to the Redcoats, servants to the British military. But I have a deep and abiding love in my heart for those English officers who at the time when the English did decide that like, hey, this Revolutionary War thing is not going so well, and that it came time to sign a treaty, absolutely refused. And Big D, you and I both have an admiration for military officers, I believe, above politicians and government figures in general, who said, no, we made a promise to these people and they're coming home with us. We cannot leave them stranded here. And they took them aboard ships against the wishes of the crown and against the wishes of the treaty. And that's the power of one, everybody.
And also, one last disclaimer here. If you hear what sounds like kittens crying and whining,
They're so cute.
I have a brother and a sister. They're on the floor, 5-week-old kittens that I'm fostering. And he is looking at me. I didn't name them, the rescue did, Band Camp and Space Camp. They're looking at me crying like, why are you not playing with me? I've been crying here for like 20 minutes. So I apologize if you hear it. That is my foster kitties.
So if you're in the Orlando area and looking to get a bonded pair,
they're fantastic.
Brother and sister, write us, host at chatpod.com, or go to chatpod.com and use the SpeakPipe feature to let us know you need some kittens.
Man, if you adopt these cats, we'll do a free commission easily. Yeah. We'll do a free commission, and it does not have to be cat-based. It can be any film.
Only cat movies would be amazing, though.
Yes, cat movies.
What is a cat movie?
There's got to be. Besides
Paul
Cats,
Abdul had that music video. Oh,
there's
God.
got to be.
Yeah.
The
Power of One is a 1992 drama directed by John G. Avildsen and loosely based on Bryce Courtenay's 1989 novel of the same title. The film stars Stephen Dorff, John Gielgud, Morgan Freeman, and Daniel Craig in his feature film debut. Set in the Union of South Africa during World War II and the years immediately afterward, the film centers on the life of Peter P.K. Keith, an Anglo-South African boy raised in the prelude to apartheid, and his conflicted relationships with German pianist Karl Doc von Volstein, colored boxing coach Gielgud, and Afrikaner romantic interest Maria Murray. Let's hit the trailer.
From Academy Award-winning director John Avildsen comes the story of a boy, orphaned in a land he loved. Challenge developed his fists. Outrage awakened his courage. Beauty inspired his love. Critics call The Power of One enormously powerful. The performance of Morgan Freeman is astonishing. Stephen Dorff, John Gielgud, and Morgan Freeman, The Power of One.
Sneak preview Saturday, March 21st.
Born in 1930 to a recently widowed Englishwoman on a homestead in the Union of South Africa, young Peter Philip Kenneth Keith, nicknamed PK, is schooled in the ways of England by his mother and the way of South Africa by a Zulu nanny, whose son Tonderai is also his best friend. However, their peaceful life is soon shattered when the farm's cattle are claimed by Rinderpest. PK's mother succumbs to a nervous breakdown, and PK is sent away to a conservative Afrikaans language boarding school while his mother recovers. Big D, as Americans, we have a fairly, let's call it limited concept of how different governments work. We are raised very simply in a melting pot with two parties that generally agree on the path for the nation and a sort of winner-take-all democracy. That is not what is normal in the rest of the world. Okay, South Africa, from the 17th century through the 1990s, definitely not what we're used to. It's way more complicated with race relations, with colonizer factions, with its overall national identity. And so hats off to Power of One for doing a masterful job of setting us up, we silly Americans, simple folk, to understand the situation that we're dealing with. I haven't seen many movies in our span of films that do such a good job taking a complex matter and making it simple for a person to understand.
I was not aware of the complexities. And we meet young PK and his mom, and they seem to be affluent. They seem to be wealthy. They seem to be well off. What exactly does this woman do all day? His mom. And I don't want to, in a film about apartheid, I don't want to focus on the mom, but she's clearly wealthy, right? She's got servants of all kinds around the house. She's got a nanny that's raising the baby, even a wet nurse nursing the baby. You have farmhands who are helping doing all of the farming, the baby feeding, everything. What does she do? Drought hits, the cows die, completely falls apart. But she's like, I've done all I can. And I'm like, what the hell has she done? She's outsourced everything. And I'm not trying to minimize the traumatic experience of the loss of her husband, but the movie presents the day-to-day life and responsibility of her and young PK in a very simplified way that I'm finding it hard to be sympathetic with her grief when she's complaining about all I have to do. And it's really nothing but just sit there and dictate where her workers go about their day.
Please, if you're English or South African and know this history better than I do, write in, let us know. I'm going to take a stab at this, though, Big D. They were not rich. It seems like they're rich. This was oppression. Much like in the South, in the US, you did not have to be rich as long as you were white to have power over some other people, namely people of color. The way it worked, much like it did in the United States, was the best land was reserved for white people. Okay. And so basically you got the land that cattle could live on. You got the land that had water supply. That went to white people. And so they could run a farm, but they did not have money. But I agree with you. There's that scene where she's reading to the baby, but the baby is not feeding from the mother. As a person with a baby right now, whose wife is breastfeeding, the idea of another person supplying that milk supply while Sarah just sat there and read a book seems like a very hoity-toity, very affluent thing to do. You talk about the complexity here. It is complex because they don't seem like they look down upon the Black people in the household, right? So PK is being raised alongside his best friend. He's nursing from the very breast of a Black woman and engaging in these Zulu customs. I think it's a world that you and I as Americans are just not prepared to understand because it's so different from where we are. I just assumed, like, yeah, if you have a woman breastfeeding your child while you read to them, you've got money. Not the case. As the only Anglo-South African student at the boarding school, PK suffers bullying from his Afrikaner fellows, particularly Japi Botha, the oldest student. PK begins wetting the bed until he meets medicine man Dabula Manzi, who gives him a chicken that becomes PK's closest companion. When the Second World War breaks out in Europe, the Afrikaner students kidnap PK and kill Mother Courage, the chicken. When PK shoves Botha in retaliation, Botha tries to kill PK and is expelled. Big D, normally the choice to have a small child narrate the first 20 minutes of your feature film that costs millions of dollars to produce is a bit risky. But I think it really paid off in The Power of One. The little boy in this film, Guy Witcher, he's adorable. He is brilliant. And he's very matter of fact with his misfortunes. Like, this kid goes through a lot of shit and he's just rattling it off for you. And I think that treatment of this first 20 minutes allows the viewer to cover a lot of ground really quickly. So Sarah was in the house as I was watching this movie, and she left to take a shower as PK was born. You see the baby coming out. By the way, gigantic baby. That was Sarah's one observation. That baby's fucking huge. And then she goes to take a shower. She takes a shower. She comes back, and the kid's in boarding school. And Sarah asked the question, is that the same kid? Now, 90% of the movies we've watched, I can give you a 30-second synopsis of what the fuck happened from the time that baby was born to you taking a shower to you coming back. I realized right then when she asked this question that it would take longer to explain everything that had happened than to just watch the movie.
Gene, I'm shocked at the amount of young PK we get. And you say matter of fact, the way like his narration goes, I'm thinking it is unrealistic and sappy. You know, when Forrest meets his son, young Forrest, this is what the narration sounds like to me. PK, he's gone through horrible things. Everything. Parents die. He gets sent to this brutal boarding school. He's bullied. His poor beloved chicken gets killed, right? It's piling up. And his voiceovers come across to me like he's reading a pleasant diary. Like it's like a cookbook. He's barely reacting to any of it. I get the movie wants us to see him as resilient, that he never feels like he's overwhelmed. He's a little boy, but he's a grown spirit. To me, it just seems so over the top where he's like, When mother died, I went to the boarding school and then they killed my chicken and then I was strung up and abused. It's as if he were an adult going back and retrospectively talking about what he had gone through in his life and somehow like soothing his pain. This is not a child talking about what he's going through in his life.
I think this is an artistic decision. You're right. No kid talks like this, and I don't think kids have the maturity to speak of things this way. Now, this could be one of two things, and I haven't read it. Admittedly, I have not read the book. One is that they're trying to establish that PK is the rainmaker, that he is this odd child, almost a demigod sort of
He's
a child.
divine.
Yeah, he's divine, where he appreciates things at a different level from the average human, in which case that's acceptable. But I think the more likely scenario is, because this comes from a novel, is that there is a narration of the childhood that needs to take place. And the choice was, do we do this as an adult or as a child, right? Do you have Stephen Dorff read you his childhood, or do you have the child himself, Guy Witcher, being the reading? And I think they wanted the kid to read the narration to establish that it is the kid talking about his childhood. But you're absolutely right. No kid talks like this.
There's horrific things that go through this poor kid's life, right? Let's take apart the character that he is playing. Let's talk about the actual kid. To go back to what movies were like back in the day. Like now they have, what is it, intimacy coordinators, Gene, and they have safe places where you could talk about the role you're playing and on set if you're feeling comfortable. This poor little kid, this little kid actor, the older kid, the young Nazi, he absolutely hawks this giant loogie. This is no CGI loogie. This is no like special effects loogie right in the face of this child. And I'm wondering, how many takes did this take? This was not the first take, Gene, not the second take. There was a couple takes here where the director's like, this looks good, but we need one more. Let's do another. I'm imagining 8 or 9 or 10 like giant loogies in this kid's face where he's got to wash it off. He's got to do it again. You as a new parent, Gene, if you are the father of this young actor, at what point do you draw the line and say, no more? No more spitting in my kid's face?
It's up to the kid, right? Like you talk with your kid and you're like, hey, like, do you want to do this movie? Kid says, yeah. I said, do you understand what it is that they're spitting in your face? They're going to piss on you and then they're going to kill your chicken. Like you get it's a movie, right? And if you feel like the kid is like on board, then it's cool. But obviously you don't want to force them into it. But one of my friends, Valeska, had a really interesting take on it where I was like, so you got to leave it up to the kid, right? And she says, no, man. What's it paying? I said, let's say it pays $5 million. And her response was, $5 million buys a lot of therapy.
Where are the adults in this school? Okay,
Right.
PK, you just said he gets pissed on. Poor PK, he's thrown into the corner of the shower. And these 3 kids pull out their dicks. They put it in his face. It's like a sexual assault.
Sure.
They're constantly bullying him. They're spitting in his face. They do it like it's like a Nazi Lord of the Flies. They're stringing him up. They kill his chicken. There's no teachers, no adult supervision.
Yeah.
It's in the middle. It's out in the open. And I'm thinking some of this has to seep into this kid's life. I've not researched what happens to him as an adult.
Yeah.
But these could not be good experiences on set.
I mean, it's the 30s, right? Any school that's going to allow you to bring your chicken is also going to let a dude pee on you. Like that's just the level of supervision that's there. But hey, they don't let your kid die. That's what's important. Is there a price point where, against her wishes, you would have your child be in a movie where she gets slapped, pissed on, and her chicken gets killed? Like $10,000?
It's got to be more than that.
Really?
I think a couple $100,000. That you said $5 million for therapy.
Yeah.
I think if I could start paying for like junior, maybe like freshman and junior year of college, that's when negotiations begin.
I feel like, with a baby.
Oh, babies won't know. You can piss on a baby. The baby won't know.
You think, but maybe you and I, why we are the way we are is because somebody peed on us as babies. You don't know.
Possible.
Yeah. I do like blankets.
It's possible.
And Victoria Falls.
Possible.
After his mother dies, PK eventually finds himself living with his grandfather, who we never meet. and
Never.
finds a mentor in Karl Doc von Volstein, a lonely German musician whose family was executed by the Nazis. Doc is sent to prison, where he introduces PK to Gielgud, who trains him to be an excellent boxer. PK earns a prisoner's respect by working with Doc to distribute contraband and write inmates letters to home. But during a prison concert, Pete is bludgeoned to death by a guard named Borman, who's later found hanged in Pete's cell.
We have Stephen Dorff, who shat the movies and shat on TV. We've come across with Blade and True Detective, right?
Yes.
I don't think there's ever been a time that we've thought, hey, he's the greatest actor. He's a powerhouse. But young Stephen Dorff, I'm surprised at the amount that I'm respecting this performance. And one of the biggest things that we've talked about is anytime we do a sports movie, is whether the actor can look good and believable at what they're doing. You can't fake athleticism. Whether you're a baseball player, a football player, like Keanu Reeves in The Replacements throwing a football, or you can't fake that. You can usually tell right away if somebody can punch or fight or do anything athletic. And Stephen Dorff, the movie hinges on whether or not we can believe he will be a boxer that can change the tide of South African political history and apartheid based on his physical prowess in the ring. And his footwork, to me, it looks right. His punches, it's not powerful, but he carries himself like a boxer. The way he dances around the ring, it seems believable to me. And I think that's a huge part that makes this role believable. And the character potentially being the mythological, the Rainmaker, is that he is believable as a character and an actor in a way I never would have expected Stephen Dorff to be.
This is twice now in recent history that you've been able to spot somebody who moves like a real fighter. And I'm very proud of you, Big D. Kudos.
Thank you.
I'm by no means a pro boxer, but I recognize immediately the way boxers move, the way that fighters move. And Rob mentioned Rocky. This is beyond Rocky. Yeah. Stephen Dorff's movement is more believable than Sylvester Stallone's. Certainly more believable than Honey Roy, Louis Gossett Jr. Yes, the jabs still have the exaggerated head movement. The fights are still incredibly truncated and not as defensive as a trained eye would like. But the fact of the matter is that he has the movement. You can tell that he is trained in boxing, and I appreciated that. And we get a lot of these bizarre, almost dreamlike moments in The Power of One. History is filled with moments that make you stop and wonder how the fuck humans devised them in the first place, right? I think Mardi Gras, my favorite time of year, what is a religion to me, right, is a fine example of that. Or the London fog, where you had a city during the Industrial Revolution that had so much smoke that people couldn't see fucking 6 feet in front of their faces. You couldn't go to a play because you literally could not see the stage. There was so much shit in the air. And so their solution was like, oh, we'll just have ropes going down the street that guide you to where you're going, right? And we'll call it the fog, as opposed to the fact that we need to deal with the fact that we have air pollution, right? Shackleton's gramophone, Big D. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. There's an Arctic expedition. Their ship gets blocked by the ice and crushed, and they're like, oh, we got to go. And what do they take with them? You know, you think, oh, you travel light, right? You take food, maybe things for worth. No, we got to drag a fucking record player with us because we need to listen to music on the ice to keep us entertained. These sorts of moments are real in history. And The Power of One gives us one where you get this prison scene. Doc playing the piano for essentially like the commissioner of these prisons, while this little boy, PK, is conducting an entire choir of African indigenous prisoners on the other side of a fence who are wrapped in blankets and sitting and singing. And you're like, how is this real? It's this dreamlike moment, but you're left in awe. You're left just wondering how.
No, but I think you're underplaying a key factor. It is the first time these rival gangs, these rival like tribes, have come together for anything. And it's through music. And you just triggered me in that moment, Gene, to think back to my time in basic training. In basic training, they strip everything from you. And I remember they took our music, my little CD player, my little Sony CD player. And there was one night when I was on Firewatch and I snuck into the room where they stored our bags. And I took my CD player out and listened to music. And it was the most liberating moment.
Wow.
When you're stripped of everything, connectivity to your family, freedom of movement, freedom of thought, freedom of everything, music was the one thing we craved. And I remember sitting there on Firewatch with my headphones in, afraid that I would be caught and listening to some bullshit CD. But it was that moment. And that's music. You go back to slaves in the US, all of the songs that were used as a method of rebellion. Here, it's a song that even the guards and the commissioner and all of them don't understand. The Zulu, what do the words mean? And it's moving in a way I didn't expect. And this is all playing off of a lot of the just emotional components of this film that work. The music comes across as a way of defiance. And this follows a moment that shocked me. We've done movies with murder of children, abuse, horror movies we've done where bodies are just desecrated. And one of the hardest scenes I've had to watch in 500 films is here. We've seen people blown apart, tortured, mutilated.
Sent to Cincinnati
With a surfboard, right? But Pete, he has to, there's a guard who sees what he is doing, the way he's moving around the prison yard, and knows he's up to something with tobacco. And he wants him to eat human waste off of a boot. And I know Morgan Freeman is not eating shit. This is like some kind of pudding or whatever it is. But I gagged. It's worse than the violence. We see people beaten to death. We see people shot. And it strips away the dignity of the character. And the movie doesn't dress it up. There's no big swell of music and a cinematic moment where he makes a prophetic statement about what he has done. It's just cruel. It's matter of fact. It's done in silence. He looks around and all the people acknowledge that by him eating shit off the boot, he's taken the bullet for all of the other people in this smuggling ring of tobacco. And it just hit me. I was like, holy shit, how do you swallow that? It's easy to think I'm going to be the big advocate of freedom. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to fight for my rights. Nobody says I'm going to lick shit off of a boot to protect my buddies. And for that, it was moving. It's worse than violence. And it shocked me.
A lot of people say they would die for their children. The question is, would you live for your children? Are you willing to make those sacrifices, right? To humble yourself, to make yourself small, to suffer indignities, right? To make sure that other people around you, not just your children, your family, your friends, other people are able to exist. It's easy to die. And I know that sounds like trite, but really it is easy to die. You just die. That's easy. I think Marcellus Wallace from Pulp Fiction said it best, right? Fuck pride. It only hurts. It never helps. It's an absolute truth there. In this case, it is a striking moment. And I could tell you, Big D, you say how a person changes and how I've changed as a father. These movies where you see a person where their child is held hostage or people going to extraordinary lengths for their kid. I can tell you right now, if my kid's hungry or in danger, I would go through fucking anything to make that not happen. I would eat shit. I would eat human shit off a boot if it came to my family. A lot of times, especially doing 80s and 90s movies, that guy's going to come through. He's going to kick your ass. That's the way he's going to win. That's not always an option. In 1948, PK studies at the prestigious Prince of Wales School in Johannesburg, where he is enamored by Maria Murray, the daughter of a leading National Party official. On a secret date, the two meet Gideon Duma, a prominent black boxer in Alexandra. Duma inspires PK to open a school for indigenous Africans, while Maria's father requests a formal investigation by Colonel Brayton and his sergeant, Japi Bata. After police maim Duma and kill Maria during a raid, PK considers going to study at Oxford in England, but Duma reminds him of all the good he can still do in South Africa. Big D, recently, most of the movies that we covered feature a charming or at least charismatic villain, right? We got Digstown, Heavyweights, The Way of the Gun, The Hitcher.
Mhm.
He's the bad guy, but you're like, he's a cool bad guy, right? We don't often get a bad guy who's just plain vile and just plain frightening. But Sergeant Botha, played by Daniel Craig, he is both of those things. And I found him shockingly disturbing for a PG-13 movie. Oh, yeah, by the way, guys, this is a PG-13 movie. And I'm not just talking about Daniel Craig, who shows why in this movie why he'd become a future star. But I'm also talking about the young Botha, who's played by an actor named Robbie Bullock, who didn't have much of a career, unfortunately, after this movie. But they both bring some serious filth to this role. And Rob, who commissioned this film, he was like, I feel awful saying this, but I'm kind of glad that like he got his, just desserts basically in the end. My regret is that he didn't get a more gruesome death. I wanted Botha to suffer. I wanted him to be absolutely humiliated and possibly mutilated because he is the baddest of the bad.
He's the worst. And I was not expecting when you have PK in his like youth running into this racist Nazi asshole, that it would turn out later on to be an authority figure that he has to deal with. And I was hoping that there would be some redemption. Hey, guess what? You fucked with me as a kid, but now I'm a boxer. Now I'm a badass. You're going to have to fight me. And it never pays off quite that well. But yes, you loathe him. He's despicable. And Daniel Craig plays this role. This is his first role. I want him to die. I want him to go through a horrific experience. And it's fantastic. I don't think I've hated a character more than him by doing less.
There's a personal chord that this struck with me, right? Which is like this idea of grievance. Botha comes from an Afrikaner family. His family was persecuted and members of his family were killed by the English, right? So he has a gripe with the Anglo Africans. I get that part, right? But he is the one who, as a teenager, decided to kill Mother Courage, the chicken, and nearly kill PK. And when he gets expelled and then gets in trouble with his parents and stuff, he holds all that resentment and that blame to PK, whose only crime was existing. This is a character who just as easily could have been like, fuck, bro, sorry. Like, I learned my lesson for what I did, but that is not what he's here to do.
No, and you're thinking that he is going to be surprised to realize that Piss Boy, the kid that him and his friends put their dick in his face and pissed on him, be like, ooh, he's now this boxer. There's no surprise. He knows immediately, hey, Piss Boy, I know who you are. He's not surprised by where he's come and how he is elevated himself through the ranks and through school and educated. He still is in a position where he thinks he's going to take advantage of him. And I texted Eugene early on where I said I had a problem that the first hour and a half of this movie, it's all about young PK. Him growing up, he's a kid, his mother, and it just goes in depth. And I'm like, I said, Gene, maybe I'm missing something here. I don't need an hour and a half of a child telling the stories about what happens to him at school and how he's bullied and how he deals with it and then how he goes back home. And it's about, I said, I felt like it was a bit too much, but this is the point now when we get him re-entering the story that flipped it for me. And the first half of the movie, it is key. You needed that. You needed the stuff with Doc and the professor, because that's where the movie, it takes forever, but it gets there. You know, when Maria's father, there's a meeting there. He's trying to court this racist fucking political leader. And he's trying to court the daughter, and the father is like, that's where you learned your liberal ideas in English schools. And PK just throws a line. He says, no, I've had them much earlier. I learned them from a German expert at cacti. And I said, holy fuck, Gene, you were right. We needed the bullshit 30 minutes of him out in the yard planting cacti to make it click. And it worked for me. I realized everything had been working up and the backstory wasn't wasted. It explained everything and why PK believed what he did and why he eventually stood up for what what would be the second half of the film, I bought it. I was willing to trade an hour and a half just for that line.
I'm so glad you came around on this, and thank you for coming around on this. I was very worried that we were going to have to debate whether examining PK's childhood was worthwhile, which I think it absolutely is. You're getting at something very interesting, because I think this movie does feel lopsided in a way, which is that we spend a lot of time through the PK's formation of his character, and then very little time on the development between that and the ending, right? The ending is really rushed. And so pacing wise, and again, it's this classic game we have to play as we get into 80s and 90s films, where it's like, do you want a really long runtime, or do you want a very balanced pace of story? And it's like one or the other, right? Do we want a 3-hour movie? Not really. Did it feel rushed at the end? Yes, but I understand why. I'm okay with it. Botha leads a violent raid on Alexandra the following night, but PK fights back and defeats his childhood enemy. When Botha pulls a gun, Gideon Duma kills Botha with a cricket bat. Now wanted fugitives from the apartheid government, PK and Duma together vowed to continue a campaign against racial injustice and segregation with the aid of the other survivors. PK's closing narration identifies meaningful voices throughout his life, from his nanny to Doc, Gielgud, Dapula Manzi, and finally Maria.
So, Gene, you mentioned there that the plot, it's going slowly, and we're introduced to PK's love. It is the daughter of this political figure, and it's Maria. And Maria gets caught up in what's going on, and PK wanting to educate the Black South Africans. And all of a sudden, there's a police raid, and Maria is fucking, like, straight up hit in the face, bleeds out, and you're like, oh, I didn't see this coming. It leads straight to a funeral scene. And I'm just like, holy shit, this escalated so fast. And the movie now went from a slow burn of like young PK to growing up. He's going to slowly like try to affect change into the murder. And then it just flips a switch, and it's insane what happens. And my issue is this. I'm a white man. I've never felt oppressed in my life, right? Never. But something that started to bother me in the movie is that almost every Black South African is incredibly patient. They're welcoming. They're eager to help PK, no matter how badly they're treated. It doesn't matter. Prisoners embrace him. The villagers embrace him. And I kept wondering, I'm like, this is a white kid. How come nobody says you're part of the problem? Nobody does. I'm not saying that they should have hated PK, right? Because PK is sympathetic to their cause. He speaks Zulu, and I would have been dropping Zulu everyone I spoke to. I'd be like, hey, I was wet nursed by a Zulu like nanny. I've
been sucking on them Zulu titties.
I've been sucking on big old brown Zulu nipples. I'm with you, people. I know it. And I'm not saying they should have hated him, but yeah, there should have been some more like problems. Like PK, he's fighting right now this black boxer, and they're all calling him Rainmaker, and the whole crowd, he knocks him out, and the whole crowd is like, woo, they're completely on board. They're like, yeah, you're the Rainmaker. Not one single person is skeptic. Not one person says, hold on, wait a minute here. It's a unanimous reaction that felt less like real people and more like Hollywood smoothing over the complications of like a white savior coming in. It's so much more complex than I feel like we get in this film.
Listeners, there should never be a situation where Dick Ebert or Gene Lyons is watching a movie and being like, I got a problem with this guy. And none of the characters in the movie have a problem with this guy. All I wanted, and I think Big D, this is all you're asking for, give me one fucking character who pushes back on this or gives him some sort of reckoning and he's like, hey, this isn't your fight, white boy. You don't belong here. What are you doing in Alexandra? I don't like the fact that you beat Dumas, right? He beats Dumas and everybody's like, oh, the Rainmaker, he's here. The prophecy is fulfilled. There's got to be one guy who's like, no, fuck that. We don't need a white guy leading our movement. We don't like him here. It's a bit unrealistic, a bit simplistic, and it's one of the few problems I have with this movie. And
dude, the boxer, who he beats, loses an eye, Gene.
Yeah.
And is he angry or vengeful? And he's like, oh, it's okay. I didn't need that eye. Oh, it's okay. And I'm like, fuck no. Like, hate the fact that you lost your eye and focus your anger and rage at the appropriate source, the leadership of the South African white political establishment. Instead, he's like, that's okay, PK. Let's go teach everybody how to read. Not once is he like, it's okay. I did need my eye.
Yeah. It extends. Maria shows up in Alexandra and they're like, oh, that white girl looks cold. Let's give her a blanket. As opposed to like, no, fuck you.
Right.
And I get it. The point is that the people of Alexandria, the indigenous people, are very generous. As you're pointing out, Big D, like they're almost angelic at that point. It's a little too much. And perhaps this is the movie's message. I don't know. But it's pretty clear to me that PK might actually be the problem. Let's look at all the people who get hurt in this movie. I mean, you mentioned Dumas losing an eye. Gielgud gets his head bashed in, right? Maria gets her head bashed in. Hoppy, the guy who owns the boxing gym, he gets arrested. His gym is burned to the ground. Okay. Alexandra, totally fucked. They get raided. People are getting massacred there. What's the one thing all of these things have in common? It's a connection to PK, right? Exactly. PK, have you considered perhaps keeping a lower profile or maybe not bringing people into your orbit might be the solution, Rainmaker? The lesson that he was getting from Doc was be smart, use your brain. That's how you make the biggest change, right? He lost that message somewhere along the way because he gets an opportunity to go to Oxford. And I'm thinking, wouldn't he have done more good if he took that scholarship from the South African government, went to Oxford, got himself a degree?
100%.
Yeah.
You use what your special abilities are or what's your assets, right? So Gandhi. Right. Gandhi grew up in poverty. He fought through the philosophy of nonviolent resistance, right? So he used that. He didn't go out and fight it. He organized like boycotts, hunger strikes, civil disobedience to like have change. If this film had been about Gandhi, Gandhi would have trained in Gatka and stick fighting, and he would have been fighting for freedom. You're much better off. Go to school in Oxford, get an education, come back, and really affect change as a political leader. Anybody can box and fight in the ghettos and fight the oppressors. But how many people have a chance to go to Oxford and get an education and come back?
I know it's not that exciting as far as the movie goes, but think about having a polylingual white boy, good-looking white boy who goes to Oxford and he could become a politician.
Yes.
He could be a lobbyist in the UK, right? Talking to Parliament about the things that they need to support in the South African government, putting pressure on them. He could become an economist. He could become an attorney, right? Yeah. To help these black South Africans, these indigenous South Africans out in their legal cases. Black South Africans have plenty of people who can fight. That's not the issue. That's not what they need. And I just thought it was such a betrayal of his upbringing and such a dopey way to use this character because he's not a real dude. You could have him do whatever. If that was his life story, cool, whatever. But this is a fictional character in a novel who had the opportunity to do something big. And I understand before you write in, guys, like I get the idea that he's not playing along with the system, man. He's got to break away from it. And it's his loyalty to the people. He can't do the privileged thing in going away to Oxford. But the fact is, like, you don't have to do with that Oxford education what the system wants you to do.
PK wasn't real. Doc wasn't real. Piet wasn't real. The Rainmaker story is fictional. The history is real. Apartheid's real, right? The prison camps, yes. But the character that Bryce created, it's a fictional retelling inspired by his childhood. You could have done it in a different way. Why not make the black character the Rainmaker, right? The choice feels intentional that I don't want to say white savior here. And you know me, I'm not the most woke host on this podcast, but I'm thinking when you have a choice to make, this was an odd one.
I think that a modern viewer would watch this film and feel that strain. Maybe it wasn't something that was present in 1992, but now being so fatigued by this idea of the white savior. To the movie's credit, though, PK was very reluctant to take on that mantle, right? Why are they singing about me? I'm not that myth. The myth is not true, yada, yada. But in the end, they kind of fulfilled that prophecy. I don't know if it ages well. Well, now it's time in the podcast where we give our Shat score for The Power of One. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes the movie take their respective bums. 0 wipes is a fantastic movie. It's absolutal. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a film. It's to have a brain and not use it. I'll go first, Big D. Yes, this movie is a bit convenient. Things all kind of snap into place the way they should. Maria dying is exactly the cleanest way to deal with a character that you know what to do with. Having PK being the white savior makes your protagonist the hero in the film. But there is a hell of a tale here. It's tackling subject matter we haven't seen and don't normally see. It's marrying a bunch of different worlds that we don't normally see. And it's really giving us some fairly outstanding performances. I was very into Morgan Freeman's performance, very into Stephen Dorff's performance. I think individually people did really well. I didn't dislike the movie, but it's not an elite film. I'd give it 2 wipes.
Put yourself back in 92. What did we expect? What could they have done? This film came out and it failed at the box office. It was an abject failure. It lost money across the board. I think it tried to make a profound statement valiantly, but it was hard. It's that weird time. I think the performances are great. The message is great. It just got lost and it felt hokey. It felt white savior. It felt like the Disneyfication of everything is like, gosh, golly, oh, gee, I know I've been beaten and I got to lick shit off the boot, but I'm going to take the moral high ground. I wanted somebody to be militant. I wanted somebody to fight back. And maybe that's 2020 sensibility, but God, it's a 3 white movie. It could have been, it's beautiful. And Rob, I'm glad you have memories with your mom, but as far as an impactful, profound film, 3 wipes.
I mean, they killed the shit out of a bunch of police. A hatchet, fucking cricket bat.
But
no?
What's the most impactful death in the film that really forces change? The death of a white woman, Gene. And the fact that I have to bring that up, that should be shocking. That's the most profound thing. That I'm not the voice of woke America. I'm not a social justice warrior. That I'm like, guess what? You get a white woman getting murdered. Holy shit. Things are going to change.
All right. Well, 3 wipes from you and 2 wipes from me. That gives an average wipe score of 2.5 wipes for The Power of One.
That now ties us in the 265 spot with Little Giants, Taps, Romper Stomper, Flash Gordon,
done already.
Sneakers, and SLC Punk.
It really is a combination between Little Giants and SLC Punk as a film.
It is. It is.
Well, Rob, welcome back to the month of Rob. We're really rock and rolling now. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, a talented musician takes a teaching job thinking it'll be temporary, but the years have a way of changing his plans. As he pours his energy into a generation of students, he slowly realizes that success isn't always measured by the dreams you achieve, but by the lives you touch. Filled with humor, heartbreak, and memorable moments, it's a reminder that some of the greatest legacies are built one person at a time. Next week, we're reviewing a movie about family, purpose, and discovering that your life works may not be what you expect. Came out in 95, budget of 31 million. And thank goodness we have a turn to profit, 106 million worldwide, nominated for some Academy Awards, 3 Golden Globes. And I've seen this and I'm excited to go back and revisit it again.
All right, excited to do that one. Thank you, Rob, for commissioning The Power of One and your upcoming commissions. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by buying our merch or commissioning your own movie. All that information is available on our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop at Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
He taught thousands of kids to listen.
Playing music is supposed to be fun.
But there was one who couldn't hear him.
You go off to school with all of your children who are normal. I can't talk to my son.
Richard Dreyfuss.
I'm a teacher.
You are his father.
I'm both.
In the story of a teacher, a father, and an inspiration to every life he touched. Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up.
I would like to dedicate this song to my son.
Mr. Holland's Opus, rated PG. Now playing at a theater near you.
But during a prison concert, Pete is bludgeoned to death by a guard named Borman, who is later found hanged in Giel's Pete cell. Sorry, in Giel's Pete cell. Who's later found hanged in Pete's cell. Excited to do that one. Oh, that concludes. Well, thank you, Rob, for your. Thank you, Rob, for commissioning the power of one. Thank you. Well, thank you, Rob, for your upcoming commission. Well, thank you, Rob, for your. And Rob, I'm going to run that through a translator right now because I don't want you meet. I thought
it sounded pretty good.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's going to say something totally terrible, like
he's tricking.
Kill
you
all
into
the
saying
white
something.
men.
Oh yes, the Rainmaker was a false god. The white man.
Yeah. Let's see. White power. It is. Thank you so much for everything, Rob. I'm sorry I doubted you. Well,
I can't believe you did that.